at the Birger engineering booth with Eric, checking out some of your products. Now, for those unfamiliar with Birger, you guys do a lot of lens control mount systems to integrate with primarily Canon for using lots of different camera systems to be able to have a much higher accurate level of control over the Canon glass. So I'm summarizing it. Why don't you give us a little bit of detail on that?
Okay, so for about 10 years now, we've had products in the marketplace that have controlled Canon lenses. We started in the industrial and scientific markets, and when the Red 1 camera came along, it was 2007, 2008, a bunch of future Red camera users on Red User tried to bring us over to this industry to take what we had been doing somewhere else and offer lens control, because the 5D craze was going on at that time. They all owned these lenses and wanted to make use of them in the broadcast market. And so the idea came actually from the marketplace on a whole that follow focus with these lenses would be a great thing. And so in that time we developed the ability to use these lenses that had been very over-engineered by Canon, happily so, in a way they hadn't imagined. And so we can do focus control with 60 position updates a second. We have a lot of working filmmakers that have used our system on Red cameras, on Sony FZ mount cameras, and we've had programming produced anywhere from local advertising to national broadcast for things like American Experience on PBS. So may I see cinematographers use us when they're not renting equipment, and it's been at the higher end of the market that we've focused these past years, and we have some up-and-coming products and some opportunities, not just with EF mount lenses, but Sony E-mount lenses and some others that we'll be ready to talk about when they ship. But for now, people should know that we're working towards the value end of the marketplace as we've promised for a number of years. We've massively increased our production and our quality control so that when a next product comes out, the excitement that's developed over the years will be regrown and maintained, because we'll be able to deliver what we've been talking about.
So I mean, there's a lot of lens control systems out there. Some people try to go in through like the USB of a camera, or they try to bypass things. You guys, as I understand it, your system kind of directly your interface goes directly into the lens mount and then communicates directly with the camera. So can you tell us about that?
Okay, so there are, you mentioned two different styles. To get the kind of control that we get, we need very real-time communication with the lens. And for instance, when you said USB, I assume you're talking about the 5D controllers. And we looked at doing something like that at one point, and one of the challenges is from the USB port out to the lens, the control isn't real-time and it isn't closed loop. You can tell the lens what to do. The lens often doesn't do what it's told to do, and correcting for that error just wasn't a possibility. And I'm talking about Canon cameras 3-4 years ago, so I don't know if that's changed. But what that ends up resulting in is drift of the focus range. Every time you reverse the direction of a lens, you gain or lose some steps. And so by communicating directly to the lens the way we do, we're able to compensate for those issues that can crop up in this basically unintended mode of operation. The lenses were designed to move from point A to point B as fast as possible, and if there was a tiny bit of an error, it wouldn't be corrected because it wouldn't be important when you're doing linear moves and you have the opportunity in still photography world to measure how out of focus you are and how far you need to move and if you're where you need to be. But when you start doing 60 focus moves a second, that little tiny bit of error can accumulate, and we compensate for that. So at least in the early architecture of a lot of these camera bodies, that kind of control wasn't possible because it didn't allow for correction of the error, and then it also wasn't real time. But one of the other interesting places where talking through the camera can be of great value is we've shown demonstrations in the past with Sony FZ mount cameras, and our demo last year, we had one of our lens mounts on the front of the camera communicating with the camera, and we had a paint box plugged into the back of the camera. Well, because Sony had traditionally used the paint box interface for remote control for their big servo and box lenses, we were able to be very real time through the camera and effect control in that sort of just hook up to the camera and in one spot and control everything, including the lens, from that one spot. And so the opportunities exist, but not at these consumer and prosumer level products where the price points that we want to hit and the creative minds. You know, one of the industry players talked about democratization of filmmaking, and I always liked the phrase, you know, independent of the manufacturer, and these prosumer and consumer level products, and you're going to see a lot of interesting ones from players that you wouldn't have thought, and the price points are incredible. Pocket cameras that shoot 4K, from players that have been making cameras for a long time, not players that have come to or have been in broadcast for a long time and started making cameras only recently. And we want to hit these kind of price points because we think that the kids shooting a video yearbook, even low-end videographers and low-end wedding videographers should have the chance to have the kind of look and feel that's not limited by their equipment, it's limited by their talent. And those kinds of price points and those kinds of opportunities are what we really want to offer. And the people at mid-market on up are just going to be pleasantly surprised, and hopefully they don't make the mistake of looking at price points and saying, this can't be right for me because it's too inexpensive. Yeah.
So in addition to cost effectiveness, we see a reduction in size. You know, with the system that you're showing right here, you know, we can get the quality of a high-end 4K camera with something that's incredibly small. And by having a direct interface with the lens, you don't have a focus controller unit and a wireless adapter and all this extra stuff. You can really minimize the kit. So tell us a little bit about the setup that you're showing right here.
Okay, so the setup here, this is an IO Industries block camera. It's a 4K quad tap SDI out. It uses the same sensor that I believe the 4K or Blackmagic cameras do. It's an industry standard sensor, and they've integrated our lens control into the camera. And one of the interesting things that they've chosen to do is put a camera control unit in the block camera. And if we look over here at the recorder, look at the recorder, they've actually put a menu system into a video feed. They have clean and dirty feeds. It's on the dirty feed, which we're choosing to put up on the recorder. You wouldn't normally do that. But this setup between this block camera and this recorder monitor is the equivalent of what a lot of people are shooting on in the fully integrated cameras like the one you're shooting us with right now. And so in a lot of opportunities like car interiors and remotely controlled stadium environments or studios, this kind of a setup can be very cost effective to work with. And then one of the other things I like to point out is there's been a movement as the cameras have gotten more sensitive that a lot of dramatic work's being shot on zoom lenses because they need to get more setups done. By the time you adjust the zoom motor, the rigging, rebalance the rig because you're switching lenses, you just can't use primes, and you lose out on that opportunity to get some of the more cinematic, shallower depth of field effect. And don't get me wrong, everything shouldn't be shot shallow depth of field. Sometimes it's overdone. But what we do with this, if I take a lens off and put a lens back on, about 3 to 5 seconds after the lens is back on the camera, we've refound the stops, we've recalibrated, any upstream control system knows which lens is there and has been able to adjust the curves. And so you get the kind of extra setups you get with the zoom lens, with the flexibility and compact nature of working with primes.
So in this setup here, this isn't necessarily an adapter that's going on to the end of an existing lens mount. You guys are replacing the lens mount in the camera.
Correct. So if this may look suspiciously familiar to another camera company's lens mounts, IO Industry chose to standardize because there was a lot of passive lens mounts in the marketplace. And so they chose something that was standard. So this one in particular, while it's customized for them from our perspective, is a standard item that the end user can unbolt and then they plug in. And so even if somebody wants to go PL or vintage or anything, or some crazy esoteric Russian something they got off eBay, it's quick and easy to change. This one's not quite as quick as the bail lock on a Sony FC camera, but it's a similar concept, that it's left up to the user to rig for the day of the way he wants to shoot. And in this case, I wouldn't say rig between shots or rig between sessions. I'd say it's, keep it that way for the day.
So, you talked briefly about it. What kind of lens mounts are currently available, and what kind of things can people expect down the road?
Okay, so right now we offer a Canon EF lens mount that's been shipping in its current configuration, but with software updates, for 6 or 7 years. We have well over 10,000 of those out in the field. I don't usually like to talk numbers, but it's important for people to understand that we have a lot of volume behind us. There are 40 or 50 camera manufacturers in the world that have standardized on our product. Pretty much all of the high-speed guys, except for one that I can think of, work with us or are currently talking to us about adding our product support. And we offer the adaptation to those cameras, whether we sell it to the end customer or the OEM or somewhere in the middle. So that's where we are and where we're coming from. And where we're going is more value-oriented, more compact version of the product, using better materials, smaller size, more feature-rich in terms of what we can do in software. We've gotten to a point with the current platform where when I want to do something new, my lead engineer says, "So what are you willing to give up?" And a big part of where we're going is to give us the chance to let our imagination run wild again and take some feedback from the environment, the user base, as to what we should add. And so some of the things that are interesting in the new products are curve matching. And so curve matching can allow you to do things like map a subsection of a lens to a marking disc with one end of the range have more resolution than the other end of the range. For instance, to make a macro lens that has lots of resolution really close in be a little more linear so that you can throw focus a little faster between two objects. Another place where you can use curves is to make two cameras match each other, or even two different lenses on two different cameras match each other, so that if you're trying to capture a shot, for instance, stereo, which, by the way, I wish would die, but we like to support the creative needs. And so as we move forward, we want to give the kinds of flexibility you see in very high-end systems at a lower level of the marketplace. And so what you'll see from us will be, our remote control our new one is codenamed the Big Dumb Knob. It's basically a knob and nothing, a knob, a radio, and a battery, and a snap-off marking disc, and nothing else. And it's because the new products will allow for multiple incoming radio connections. So any of your complicated human interaction, the non-real-time stuff like setting up curves and pre-production kind of uses, the information will be through your iDevice or an Android device. The knob is for that tactile, real world, the way your brain works interacting with the real world. There's no substitute for knobs, hand wheels, those kinds of interfaces. So the fact that you're not seeing one here today doesn't mean we're not committed to it. It just means we don't have one that's shipping right now, and this year's theme is, if it's real, it's shipping, you can buy it, it's here. If it's about the future, we'll give some indication of where we're going, but there are no 3D prints in the booth. There are no pre-production prototypes. When we get to first articles, we'll show exactly what we're doing. And then the last area that we're working towards is not just Canon EF. A lot of people think of us as the Canon EF mount company, the guys who have that down. We're the lens interface company. You know, we have the Cook Eye interface that we use to talk to cameras, and we're a member of their consortium. We're in active conversations with a number of the camera manufacturers about other lens interfaces, and in the lab we've gotten things like Nikon F, Sony E-mount, Sony FZ mount, all working at a very high level and ready to be put into products. So I won't talk about dates. I will talk about the fact that we're moving forward, and the day that we're ready to talk about it again, and the first time you see a picture of something that looks like a real product, it's going to be something you can buy.
Awesome. All right, well, thanks again for your time,
Thanks for taking the time.
All right, we're here with Robert now. Now, you've had experience working with the
Yes.
Birger stuff. You've done your own shoots, and we're
Yes.
taking a look at some of them right now. Tell us about that experience. What do you enjoy about having that tool?
Well, my wife Amber Lomer and I work together, and we've been shooting almost exclusively on Birger mount with different prototypical lens remote controllers for about 5 years now. So we've shot movies, we've shot commercials, we've shot music videos, and in Canada we have horrible weather and very tight budgets, but an audience expectation that's based on Hollywood films and Hollywood commercials and New York commercials. So this, for example, it was minus 15 Fahrenheit when we shot this. And so the actors have to run out, you get your shot, they run back to the trailer, warm up, or we were lucky enough to have enough money for a trailer that day. In Canada, sometimes there's just a fire that the guys made. So, I mean, we really have benefited from the fact that it's so fast to change the lens. You put this on the camera and you're in remote follow focus mode. So that means I don't have to worry. I can put the camera on a jib. But my AC is always in remote follow focus mode. I can put it on the floor. There's no calibration. I mean, we use Bartex and so on, obviously, and the problem there is the time. And when it's minus 15, when you have the location that looks fantastic, but you have it for 3 hours, you're going to end up just using one lens and not using exactly what you need. Here, I mean, we switch the lens. It takes 10 seconds to do, and we're ready to go. And I really, the look of Canon lenses, once you solve the focus problem, is really nice. I mean, there are some lenses, I'll be honest, I prefer, like Cook, but not many. Most PL lenses, the look, just forget cost, forget convenience, I find a little less nice than the nicest Canon Ls. And you can see in this, there's some very, very slow dollies. And even with a cheaper, motorized system, you would have a tiny bit of stepping here if you're changing the focus that little, and like every second it's going one, you'll feel the click. With this, there's just always buttery smooth, it's always on. And
well, when you're working with macros too, in that
yes,
minimal amount of range that you have.
Those curves he talked about, those are fantastic. And you can set the wheel also very quickly to be slow, medium, fast. So you'll see there's a macro shot right there. See there, we set it to ultra slow. So 1 inch was like half the wheel, and we could make marks precisely based on the dolly and just keep that focus really, really wonderfully in a way that if we were using mechanical follow focus and a PL lens, it would have been really hard to make marks. It would have been just half a millimeter away on the wheel, half a inch. I don't know how. But anyway, tiny little close. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, I mean, locations are always too small. Part of the Canadian tradition, I guess, is because Canada comes from, even though what we're doing is very far from documentary, but is using real locations, real places, and dressing them. So they're always too small, they're not studios. And so you're always, you want a little bit of distance, especially in fashion. You want the girls to look pretty, and wide angle close is not what you want. So you're always jammed up against the wall. And it used to be that my AC and I became very good friends, maybe a little bit too good friends, yep, pressed up against it together. And then, I would always have to ask for their hand in marriage at the end of the shoot just to be proper. Whereas with this, I mean, they're off in a, and especially with 4K now, like we'll steal close-ups. There's one stolen close-up in this. I try not to because it doesn't look quite as nice as framing as you should. But sometimes we'll have to steal a close-up. And if they're focusing off a tiny little monitor, which is necessary when they're using the whip, I mean that's their only, and the marks, right? you know, that's might be a little soft when you go to zoom in. It'll look okay full frame, but we just have a 50-inch monitor that we put off to the side. It's not spilling light onto the set. It's not distracting the actors because it's wherever we want it to be, you know, with the PowerLinks transmitter. And, you know, again, remote follow focus all the time, instant, cheap. And, you know, try putting a motor on a Canon, oh my God, because it slips and it, you know, it goes past infinity, it just keeps turning. Whereas this, you know, we turn it off at lunch. Again, prototypical system, which unfortunately soon people will be able to buy, but not quite yet. We turn it back on after lunch and the marks are still perfect. I mean, it's really cool. So I don't think we would be as far ahead in our career as we are if we hadn't found Birger, honestly. And I mean, I came here for free to help Eric because of how much I love this, and I want to share, you know, our enthusiasm with other users, get other people to benefit and improve their work as much as we've been able to with this. I mean, you run a Steadicam all day on a Canon L. You know, try putting a, I love the look, I'm not knocking Cook, but try putting one of a big bad boy Cook lens on a Steadicam, and you know, half of your shooting time is lost. The guy's going to be, well, my wife does Steadicam, she's very slight and ballerina-like, and so, I mean, we're talking, you know, it just wouldn't work.
On gimbal operation too, I mean, you get into that realm, it's hard to keep throwing stuff on there unless you have a giant system. So
giant system, and then giant system means different permit levels, means attracting attention. If you're shooting outside, again, we use real locations a lot. People on the street, Montreal's a busy city. Hey, look what you're doing, cool. And the bigger it is, the more that guy's going to be there. And even with jibs, like you think about, you add 6 pounds to the end of a jib, that means you're adding 30 pounds to the counterweights. That means an extra bag of weights coming off the truck that has to be brought from the truck to set, put on the thing. That's 10, 15 minutes of set time, which on a shooting day where, you know, you have rented locations, actors, makeup, all that, that's a lot of money you're spending on that, you know, 30 pounds. It's because minutes of shooting time are what the gold of production is. So you know, it sounds cheesy, but this was really life-changing for us. And it also means, like Canon Ls, you know, I said we operate at low budget. We operate at reasonable budgets. And, you know, like Canon Ls are affordable to, you can own all of them. You know, I can't own even one Cook. But we basically have a case that has all the lenses. So we get to set and we're like, you know what, it would be nice to have a 400 millimeter right now. Well, there it is, you know, in a small case that doesn't weigh a ton, even like, again, it came off the truck and it was no problem. You know, and just that, having that variety, you know, we have tilt shifts in the case, we have fisheyes, and maybe 3 shoots will go by and we won't use the fisheye. But that one time when, oh man, you know what, this would look awesome right now, it's just there, and you put it on, you know, and for the cost of, you know, even the rental cost, if you don't want to buy them, of renting one prime in PL, we have like the universe of lenses. And in fact, that too has improved me as a cinematographer. I used to be very conservative, you know, I just rent 24, 50, 85, maybe 135 or something in that range. And that was it, because more than that, you know, the day rate was, and now you're just like, well, what is really the meaning implication of shooting at 16? Can we maybe get some shots where people don't, you start exploring, being inventive, because again, every time we shoot, we've got every lens in the world. And so I think that too has helped us a lot. And just being able to shoot and have proper focus, a lot of this is very deep depth of field. And if you were going to pull focus off a small monitor, it's very hard to see deep depth of field in a small monitor. So with the big monitor and making marks, it's on, and there's still a little bit of differentiation between foreground and back, but it's subtle, and that's kind of a fashion look. You'll see, like you look at fashion magazines, you know, there's a lot of very deep depth of field. It's based on using a big strobe, and also they want to show the clothes, so that's kind of a tradition. And you know, we've been able to do better. People think of focus issues as being shallow, but I think the toughest focus is when there's almost no difference. Then you really have to nail it, measure it, otherwise it's just going to look, off. So yeah, it's lowered our budgets, it's improved what we can do, it's opened up creative possibilities, and Eric is a really great guy. And and it's never let us down is the other thing. Like there's never been a drift. Since we've used the system, the first iteration there was a little bit of drifting, but it's been about 4.5 years now since we've seen drift. Like the marks just, that's awesome. What motorized follow focus, remote follow focus, can claim that you could shoot 4.5 years and never see drift? That's, so I really, I'm looking forward to when thousands of people will have, their work improved as much as we've been able to as beta testers for Birger.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Robert.
Thanks to our sponsors for making our NAB coverage possible.